All right, so in this video, I'm going to be, I guess, kind of calling my shot, if you will, based on recent political trends, the amount of people that really don't identify as either a conservative or a liberal. They don't want to vote for the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate. Before I start this video, let me say that I don't think Robert F. Kennedy, the independent running in 2024, has much of a chance to win. I don't expect that. Outside of something major coming out about both Biden and Trump that's horribly bad, like a terrible scandal, RFK very likely going to get 7, 8, 9, maybe 10% of the vote. We really don't know what's going to happen with RFK in terms of the popular vote, just because this is so new to everyone, actually having a kind of legitimate independent candidate. And the reason I say kind of is because about 90% of the battle of winning as an independent candidate in the United States is convincing people that you can actually win. Because a lot of people are going to have the opinion, many people who are independents, they all at least lean slightly one way or another. And they'd think, well, voting for RFK is a complete waste of time. There's no point in doing that. And then you've got the Democrats saying, well, if you vote for RFK, you're voting for that fascist, disgusting Donald Trump because RFK has no chance to win. And if you are a Republican, you're saying, well, if you vote for RFK, you're voting for Joe Biden, who can't even remember his own name, with the historically bad approval rating and the horrible economy where no one can buy a home. So it's very hard to convince people that an independent candidate can actually win, and that no, you're not throwing your vote away if you vote for an independent. It's certainly, I think right now, Donald Trump, probably 60-65% chance, maybe even higher in terms of being the president, Biden the other 30%, whatever, but it seemingly is trending in Trump's direction. When it comes to 2028, and it doesn't have to be him, but the person that keeps coming to my mind on a potential independent running, kind of waiting and seeing how RFK does in 2024, maybe as a launch pad for an independent candidate in 2028, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, The Rock came out and said both Republicans and Democrats approached him about possibly running. He's got one of the highest approval ratings amongst any celebrities. And we know now with Trump entering politics, being a celebrity and winning, it is possible. Of course, The Rock would have to show competency in terms of debates and things like that, and really where he actually stands on issues. I will say, I do think RFK does a pretty good job of being an independent, to where you have both liberals that dislike him and conservatives that dislike him, but he does have beliefs from both parties. And when it comes to being an independent and speaking as an independent, of course, people that are radically left are not going to like you because you're not going to agree with a lot of what they say because they're very far to one side. It's the same thing if someone is very far to the right. So I do think RFK does a decent job of balancing being an independent and taking ideas from both sides, and who can really perfect that in terms of popularity. I think someone like The Rock right now is waiting and seeing, and his camp is looking at RFK, how much can he actually win in the way of popular vote, because he's not going to win any state unless, again, something catastrophic happens. But I do think you're seeing the starting point of a potential independent rise in this country. And a lot of this is speculation. We don't know who's going to win in 2024. Again, I would think at this point, Trump, at least according to polls, any type of betting would suggest he's a sizable favorite. Biden, historically bad approval rating, would point to that. But it's the idea and the belief getting people to elect an independent president is more so getting people to understand and realize that an independent can actually win the election. And I think one of RFK's biggest missteps wasn't really a misstep. It was just he declared as an independent candidate too late in the game. See, now everyone kind of knows the idea of an independent candidate. We don't know how RFK is going to perform, but now it's kind of in the narrative. So once we hit 2025, 2026, when we start talking about 2028, the idea of an independent candidate is already going to be baked into people's minds. And again, I don't know if it's going to be The Rock. I could see The Rock running probably more so as a liberal than a conservative, but I also know if you pick one of the sides, you're going to be hated by half the people. I'm sure he doesn't want that. And that's why I'm speculating that maybe it's The Rock and his team lying in the weeds, letting the narrative form that an independent party can viably win if RFK performs decently in terms of the popular vote. Again, I don't expect him to take any electoral votes. He's just not going to have enough support in any single state. But I think in general, the narrative, which is so very important, will at least be in people's heads that an independent candidate, at least at some point, might have a chance of winning. And the reason I think it could be The Rock, and personally, I do think The Rock is a little bit more left than he is right. If he were to run under a party, I think it would be a kind of moderate Democrat. But imagine this, picture this in 2028. Trump wins in 2024. I don't know who his VP will end up being. Apparently, Tim Scott now is the favorite. But imagine like Glenn Youngkin possibly as the Republican nominee, Michelle Obama. I can only imagine the Democrats, if they lose with Biden in 2024, shifting back certainly to a female, probably a minority, maybe going to Michelle Obama, trying to swing the whole revenge if Trump wins in 2024, and then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as an independent. Now, here's what The Rock has said previously. The Rock for president in 2020. This was talked about, looks like right after Trump won in 2016. He's saying in 2016, I wouldn't rule out a run in 2020. It seems like this is something that certainly is going to happen just based off of that quote. Normally, when it comes to the celebrities talking about president, they immediately deny it, even if in the back of their minds they might want to try and run for office one day. This was recently talked about in late 2023. Is The Rock teasing a 2024 presidential run during a December 6th of 2023 interview, and he basically says at the end of a quote, "That's what I can tell you, so it's not a no on possibly running for president." Now, will it be The Rock as an independent in 2028? Nobody really knows, but just what we've kind of got in terms of reading from the tea leaves, I could see a scenario where he is possibly the independent choice once people realize there is an independent candidate that can possibly win. And with the disdain people have for Republicans and for Democrats, certainly there are a big swath of the country that is a hardcore one way or another. They're going to vote for Republican no matter what. They don't want an independent. They don't want compromise with liberal ideas. Same thing with liberals and conservative ideas. But there are a lot of independents, and the key is getting independent voters to believe that the independent candidate can actually win, because I still think, even with RFK, the family name, he hasn't really convinced people that he can win against Biden or Trump, and the polls certainly do not help him in that case when it comes to I mean, some of these polls don't even include RFK in them. It's just Biden versus Trump, 1 versus 1. So with the change in 2024, an actual independent coming in, not really winning, but possibly we might look back on RFK's presidential run as kind of a beaconing into a new independent era in the United States, possibly allowing and paying the wave for someone even bigger and more popular to really launch a campaign run for 2028, possibly The Rock. And The Rock was not recently on Joe Rogan, but maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, and everyone was kind of talking about how much of a dud it was. It seemed like The Rock and Rogan were both afraid of their own shadows. They really didn't want to get into anything of substance. It was like The Rock was already a political figure. Like, he would just give the most basic answers. It was very strange. You would think Joe Rogan, The Rock, having a podcast, that would be great, but it came off like very politically. It was very strange, and The Rock was very safeguarded about what he was talking about, so that is something interesting to take into account. But either way, guys, we will see what happens. Obviously, 2028 is a ways off, but this would be something that happens a lot sooner than that, at least in terms of somebody big announcing they're going to be running for 2028, whether or not Trump or Biden wins. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.